Yesterday, news broke that President Trump has fired Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, the former CEO of ExxonMobil, and has announced that CIA Director Mike Pompeo, who has been in that position for around a year since Trump got into office, will replace Tillerson. Before we get to who Pompeo is, which is what this video will be about, it's important to note what an abject failure Tillerson was in his role as Secretary of State, both in his official capacity as the chief diplomat for the United States and in his unofficial role as ExxonMobil CEO, just operating in our government. He was really still working for ExxonMobil, coming into this massive governmental role purely to lift the Russian sanctions that prevented a $500 billion deal from going through, which would have allowed Exxon to drill in the Russian Arctic. Exxon was estimated to make trillions in profits. But when Congress voted to prevent Trump and thus Tillerson from overturning those sanctions, Tillerson basically had nothing to do in his role anymore. That's the real reason he's leaving, in my opinion, even though the media keeps saying it's because Tillerson called Trump an effing moron. That ain't it. It's always about the cash, especially with these Republicans. But let's look forward here, because while Tillerson was an insanely ineffective diplomat who was in it for corporate profits, Pompeo is potentially more dangerous. He's a right-wing Tea Party zealot, and here's some of his history. Pompeo was elected to the House of Representatives in 2010, representing Kansas State during the era of the Tea Party, the ultra-conservative branch of the Republican Party. Al Jazeera is specifying for an international audience here. He ran against Democratic candidate Raj Goyal, a lifelong Kansas resident and son of Hindu-Indian immigrants. That didn't stop Pompeo from posting a link to a blog on his campaign's Facebook page that called Goyal just another turban topper we don't need in Congress or any political office that deals with the U.S. Constitution, Christianity, and the United States of America! Exclamation point. Another turban topper? Like, we don't have that any diversity in Congress. Anyway, in 2013, 2 months after the Boston Marathon bombing, Pompeo took to the House floor to accuse U.S. Muslim leaders of failing to condemn extremist attacks. Silence has made these Islamic leaders across America potentially complicit in these acts, he said. Weirdly, he didn't say that all white men were complicit in the Las Vegas shooting or the Charleston shooting or any other domestic terror incidents, a majority of which are committed by right-wing terrorists. You didn't really hear much about that from Pompeo. So he fits the mold of Islamophobe and bigot, which is par for the course in the Trump administration. He also fits the mold of standard-bought Republican, with his top career donor being Koch Industries and being a proud NRA member and receiver of their cash. But policy-wise, when it comes to surveillance, torture, and more, he's even worse than I first thought, honestly. Let's start with surveillance, or more specifically, leakers. Here's what he said about Edward Snowden on C-SPAN in 2016.
It's absolutely the case that we have not been able to secure all the American information that we needed to, and that we've had the traitor Edward Snowden steal that information. He should be brought back from Russia and given due process, and I think the proper outcome would be that he would be given a death sentence for having put friends of mine, friends of yours who serve in the military today, at enormous risk because of the information he stole and then released to foreign powers.
That's fascist talk. The way he just casually said that was really scary. He is, of course, isn't just in favor of executing Edward Snowden. He's in favor of the unconstitutional programs that Snowden revealed. The revelations triggered some safeguards on metadata collection, and in 2016, Pompeo said he wanted to do away with any of that progress and go even further. This was well before he was nominated for his CIA director position as well. U.S. Representative Mike Pompeo, a Republican from Wichita, says that eventually he wants the National Security Agency to be able to restart its bulk collection of metadata and combine those records with even more information, financial and lifestyle details that would be accessible in a huge searchable database. It's a controversial stance that divides the all-GOP Kansas congressional delegation and exposes a larger rift in the Republican Party between national security hawks and libertarian-leaning conservatives determined to rein in government surveillance powers. Kansas Representatives Tim Holskamp, Kevin Yoder, and Lynn Jenkins, along with Senator Jerry Moran, have expressed concerns that the bulk collection of metadata threatens American civil liberties. Pompeo doesn't favor that view. In an essay for the National Review, he said Republicans who didn't support the collection of metadata were as weak as Democrats. I'm sure that you can predict his views on torture, but I will run through them anyway so you can get the full effect of those views. This is the kind of person that mainstream pundits would call an adult in the room, like Mad Dog Mattis or John Kelly, like Mike Pence. These are the kinds of views they think are acceptable. One of Obama's first acts as president was to sign an order to close Guantanamo. The base was never closed. Pompeo has spoken favorably of this outcome. Gitmo has been a goldmine of intelligence about radical Islamic terrorism, Pompeo said in 2016. Many of the 41 detainees at Guantanamo have never been tried. Of these men, 31 are being held in indefinite law of war detention. By the way, that's not true. It's not a gold mine. And after hearing of the hunger strikes in Gitmo, he said, "It is not a crisis mode. The last thing to say about these folks who are assertedly hunger strikers is that they look to me like a lot of them have put on weight." Obviously, the Guantanamo Bay detentions are some of the greatest civil liberties abuses of our time. Pompeo in the past has been pro-torture, but rolled back his views upon questioning by Senator Dianne Feinstein during his CIA director confirmation hearing. He's probably still for them. Here are some other troubling facts about Pompeo that you just won't hear in the mainstream press. A headline from the magazine Foreign Policy: "More white, more male, more Jesus. CIA employees fear Pompeo is quietly killing the agency's diversity mandate." Or this headline from Haaretz: "A new U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has a hawkish history on Iran and Israel. He has warned that the Iran nuclear deal was failing and has compared Iran to ISIS. He has also said that nuclear cooperation between Iran and North Korea was a real risk to the United States." In November 2015, Pompeo visited Israel and met with Netanyahu, a meeting which he said left a strong impression on him. Prime Minister Netanyahu is a true partner of the American people, Pompeo said after their discussion at the Prime Minister's office in Jerusalem. That's not how I would describe Dick Cheney 2.0, also known as Netanyahu, but hey, that's just me. Here is one small story that really gets me going. And again, no one in the establishment, press, or political sphere is going to talk about this. Some in politics, but he gave the Saudi Arabia Crown Prince an award, a medal, for counter-terrorism work. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Nayef was presented with the George Tenet Medal by CIA Director Mike Pompeo during the new chief's first overseas visit to Turkey over the weekend, the official Saudi press agency reported. The medal was awarded in recognition of Prince bin Nayef's excellent intelligence performance in the domain of counter-terrorism and his unbound contribution to realize world security and peace. World security and peace. This is while Saudi Arabia was in the midst of a genocidal war in Yemen, which started off in 2015, killing tens of thousands and displacing millions, creating a mass refugee crisis. Saudi Arabia is literally blockading aid from getting to those displaced people who are dying of diseases. And all the while, Saudi Arabia and the United States, right-wingers in the US, are rooting for the failure of the Iran nuclear peace deal. I will say it again, Pompeo gave the Crown Prince an award for world security and peace. It's like an Onion article. Another gross element, this medal ceremony was held by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, a DC think tank that receives money from dictators around the world, not just Saudi Arabia. So, while I mentioned that Netanyahu is Dick Cheney 2.0, so is Pompeo, in a way. A corrupt, dogmatic war hawk with little to no empathy for people who don't look like him, who is about to ascend to one of the most powerful positions in the country and in the world. And the gross part about it is that he will be confirmed. That's my prediction. Even in the era of resistance for Trump, there is still a large swath of Democrats who favor muscular foreign policy, also known as hawkishness and bloodlusting this. I don't know. That favors certain dictatorial countries and goes after others. For example, the 5 Democrats who voted for the Saudi arms deal: Senators Bill Nelson of Florida, Claire McCaskill of Missouri, Joe Manchin of West Virginia, good old Joe Manchin, Mark Warner of Virginia, and Joe Donnelly of Indiana. You think they won't vote this guy in, those guys, at least those 5? Remember how many Democrats backed the Iraq War? Yeah, bipartisan support for guys like Pompeo is way more widespread than we'd like to believe, and it's really disheartening.